Lab 3B bracket, we're going to take this part now that we've created the two-dimensional part and make a three-dimensional model of it. If we take a look at the exercise, we have this bracket and it's drawn in what would be called an isometric view. Isometric drawings were used with pencils because paper was flat, and so we drew this in this perspective. When we work with CAD, we have a three-dimensional drawing environment, so we're going to create a model out of it. So let's get started. We're going to switch over to model space, which is where we created the drawing. And then we're going to look at this in terms of shapes and boundaries. What shapes do we basically have here? And if we take a look at this drawing right here, we essentially have three pieces. If we were going to take this and weld it together or make it out of metal or wood, we have the bottom piece right here, which has these two slots in it. We have this triangular shape, which would be called a fillet, and then we have this back component right here. And I guess when I say fillet, it would be like a fillet weld if we were going to weld it, but it's kind of a brace or a gusset. So let's get started. What we're going to do is we're going to turn off the dimension layer. And it says, since that layer is current, do you want to turn it off? Yeah, I'll turn it off. But it's almost like when you turn off the current layer, it's like drawing with the lights out, in a room. So you've got to remember to switch to a different layer. And so we'll turn off the hidden line layer as well, and the center line layer. And then we'll make layer 0 active. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a layer, and we're going to make a new layer, and we're going to call it 3D. And we'll choose a color for that. I usually go with this one. And we'll make that current. And then we've turned off our layers to get our object into the shapes that we want. And we want to be careful not to destroy this geometry because it will be used in the two-dimensional view in our title block. So even though we turned off the layers in model space, they don't show in this floating viewport in paper space. So we don't want to erase things, is the point I'm trying to make here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create these shapes. And so I'm just going to copy these over to the side. And then I'm going to simplify it by erasing this geometry. So it's just the boundary shape, like that. I'm going to do the same for this piece over here. I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to do the same thing. I only need this part right here. And so I'm going to get rid of this. And I'm going to get rid of this. And then lastly, I'll need a line for the wedge. And I missed it in the assignment. So I'm going to draw a line from this point right here to this point. And then I'm going to match properties for that. There we go. And so I need just this corner part. So I'm going to copy that over here. So those are the pieces or the components that I'm going to need to create the model. And once we have that part figured out, it goes very quickly. And so what we'll do is we'll change the view from top view, southeast isometric. We're on the 3D layer. And what we're going to do is we're going to press pull the thickness of each of the parts. And so the base is 0.75 thick right here. So we're going to press pull that. To do that, we're going to type in press pull, or we can just switch over to the other user. And so we can change the workspace by going to 3D Basics. And then we can get press pull right here. Once we have it, we just hover, click, and then we'll pull that up 0.75. I'm going to do that again I'm going to undo it, and I'm going to do that again, conceptual, which is a different visual style. And I'll say press pull, hover, click, 0.75. And we're going to do the same to this piece. Hover, click, 0.75. And then this piece is 0.6. Once we have created the extrusions or the press pulls of the parts, we're going to 3D rotate them. And so we're going to use the rotate gizmo. I'm going to click on rotate. I'm going to click on the part, and then I'm going to click on this band, and I'm going to rotate that like that. And we want that to go in 90-degree increments. We'll do that again for this part. Then we'll rotate it into the correct. And you can see the polar tracking will tell me when that's at a 90-degree angle. You can also turn on the ortho mode, and then it will always go in 90-degree increments. And I'd recommend using ortho as a new CAD person. We're then going to move these, and so we're just going to use the move command. I'm going to click on it, hit enter, and I'm going to use the endpoint here and the endpoint here. And I'm going to do the same with this one. I'm going to move it from this endpoint to this endpoint. So I'll say move, select the part, hit enter, grab the endpoint, and then move it to this endpoint. I can erase the ghost geometry. Before I do, I'm going to union these together, because what happens is they're together, but they're not glued together. So I could move any of these and it would come apart. So to be able to fuse everything together, we'll say union, and then we'll put a box around it, get all three of those parts, and hit enter. And then I'll just move it off of the ghost geometry like that. And then I'm going to erase the ghost geometry. Actually, I'll just move the part to the other side. We'll leave it there just for the sake of if we do need to model anything else. So that's what the 3D model looks like. Now, to be able to get that to display in paper space, we'll click on the B-size title block. And then we want to be in paper space. We don't want to be in this floating viewport. So we want to be double clicked out, and we want to have the paper space icon. And then what we want to do is we want to go back to our drafting and annotation, and I'm going to turn on my menu bar. I'm going to go over to the viewport layer, and I'm going to create a circle on the viewport layer, just like this. So the circle needs to be in paper space. And then what we're going to do is we're going to convert that into a viewport by saying view, viewport, object, and I'm going to click on it. I'm going to double click in that viewport, and then I'm going to go and find my 3D part, meaning I'm going to pan and zoom, and then I'm going to change the view, 3D view, southeast isometric. I'm going to have to pan and zoom again. And I'm going to change the visual style for that to conceptual. But the only thing I have right now is that the part is a little too close to it. If I were to go in model space and move it a little farther away, I'll have to recenter it, but you'll see what happens when we come back here. And this is a good problem. This often happens where we can't get back into our viewport. Control R on the keyboard will get you into that viewport, and then you can put it back in the right location. Double click out of the viewport, update the title block if there were any changes, and we'll save this. And we'll just keep it as the same name. It's still 3B. We'll hit save. Yes, that is good. And then we'll need to turn on the layers. So we'll come back here. We want to turn our center line back on, our dimension lines and our hidden lines. Okay, you can save it one more time. And that completes how to 3D model this bracket.